Hey guys, I'm back again and with another session on the memory bits. And today I have Mr. Pankaj Rai with me. Just to give you a brief introduction about what has he done in his life, what is his career about. So he is right now the chief data and analytics officer at Aditya Birla Group. He was also a senior vice president strategy at Wells Fargo. Before that, he has worked at leadership positions at Dell, Standard Chartered Bank. And yes, he started his career with Feedback Ventures and then also worked in ICICI Bank for initial, 4 5 years of his career. I welcome you, Pankaj sir, and it's always a pleasure meeting you and talking to you all the time.
Thanks, Rishikesh. Good to be here, and I can see you have put me on a very interesting new platform called StreamYard, which I wasn't used to. So I've learned something every day.
Right. So, so my first question, sir, is like on this only. How do you maintain this learning spirit, learning agility, even after having, more than 15 20 years of experience inside the industry?
Uh, Rishi, I don't know because many a time, I'm asked some questions about why I am the way I am. And sometimes I find it quite hard to answer the question because whoever I am or whatever I am, a lot of things have happened very organically, not with a sense of design or purpose or putting some things in place. Of course, one does put effort or some systems in place, but that's why I find it hard. So this curiosity that you refer to, when I reflect, it has just been part of my life. I still remember when I was much younger, one of my friends would sometimes tell me, "यार तू जिसको मिलता है तो उसका इंटरव्यू लेने लग जाता है." Then I reflected and thought, what am I doing? So it then appeared to me that yeah, whenever I meet people, I am very curious. Oh, where are you from? What have you done? What do you do? Ye, wo, wo, sara. So maybe it was always there, and it has just continued to remain there. So as they say, there are two parts of an individual. One is called nature, which is sort of inherited behavior, and the other is nurture that you develop based on the environment. It looks to me, and I could be wrong. Maybe I have to ask my mother, father. Maybe it just who I am. I don't think I have done anything to cultivate it or do anything even today to do. I just do what comes to my mind.
Yeah, because Pankaj sir, a lot of the things that you talked about, the curiosity, the learning agility, I think forms a very important part of should be a very important part of our life. To keep us aspirational enough. Keep on learning the things. What should the younger generation, people who are kind of striving to to start their career or maybe in the early part of their career should do to make sure that they don't lose out on this thing.
Yeah, I think everyone has to find a reason to do what they do because many a times I'm also asked that, oh, you are a very big networker. How do I learn networking? To me again, networking is a way to reach out to new people and learn and contribute or some such thing. So I think if people were to try to focus and reflect upon themselves to say what is it that gives them pleasure. And the easier example I can say is in sports. We all try different sports. We don't like some and we like some, and then we can. Everyone is probably meant to be different and meant to do different things. And if we are able to continue to have this experimentation mindset and trying out different things, then I think today's generation I think in a far better position to do experimentation than my generation. In my generation, the only experiments I could perform was engineering, medicine, or chartered accountancy. The fourth experiment was not allowed. It did not exist. Today, 5,000 experiments are allowed and they all exist, and many of parents and many of families are allowing people to do experiments. So I think the availability of a lot of those experiments is far more there. Even in the corporate sector, if you look at it, if we were, at least when I was young, we were wanting to do something, it was very hard. You can't, do experiments. Today, you can buy pretty much everything as a service. You can buy software as a service, you can buy anything as a service, AI as a service. So the amount of frugal experimentation that you can do today in a corporate setup, almost free of cost, is phenomenal. We couldn't have done it. We would have to buy a computer, buy expensive software. So therefore, to me, I think the current generation is in a very better place than anyone before, where there is so many options to do experiments. There are so many cheap tools to do experiments. So perhaps the only thing they need to do is to break away from the mental model that they may have inherited from my generation, where we were, not so open-minded and not experimentative, because either the opportunities did not exist or the tools didn't exist. So I think it is quite possible that the younger generation may fall in the trap of following their seniors who are maybe not as experimentative, maybe not as creative. So if they were to just stay away from that and just be themselves, I think by nature probably we are all experimentative and curious. I think some of the environment probably kills curiosity. Because if you think about it, when you were a young child and you had not gone to school or college, I think you were very curious. You would go break things, touch things, ask questions, all of that. So to me, that is natural. What tends to happen later on is unnatural. So if people can remain natural, if I can say so, that is what it is. In fact, I have to tell you one interesting anecdote on this topic. One of my good close friends, Kuldeep Dongre, he's in Dell and data scientist, very, very sincere and strong person, and who I really like. So he had once told me, and he became a music pandit. He took a almost a very advanced course, and he's a great musician. So on this topic, he shared the interview of a very famous singer. I think the Ustad Allah Rakha Khan ka gharana, and he was the sixth or seventh generation. And the interviewer was asking him that question, that what will you do to be different? And that question is often asked. You can ask Amitabh Bachchan's son, what will you do to be different? You can ask Sachin Tendulkar's son, what will you do to be different? So that person gave a very nice answer and very profound, and I still remember it, which is why I'm telling you. He said, the way you ask that question is not probably the way I think. He says, the way whatever I will do, it will be different. In order to comply to my, previous generation, I'll have to put effort because I'll have to copy them. But if I did not copy them, by nature I'll be different only. So I do think that we can apply the same thing to ourselves to say, if we did not copy someone else, we will naturally be different and unique. And I think all of us have to see how through various self-experimentation we can bring the whatever we are, chisel out of the stone, which is the largest society that we are a part of, and become unique. And the opportunity exists.
Absolutely. So becoming unique, is very important. Pankaj sir, like, one more thing, related to industry, we would like to take your perspective on that. Like, in your time, or even like, 5, 6 years back also, a lot of companies, used to run empty programs. Even till now, a lot of companies run empty programs, with a view to create a leadership pipeline for them, maybe down the line, 5 or 6, 7 years down the line. But these days, a lot of startups have actually popped up. The culture has changed a little bit. The gig economy is basically, coming up. Organizations are kind of, nowadays basically hesitant to invest on, learning and development, and have an expectation for that candidate, to start performing from day one. And a lot of it has actually peeped into the legacy organizations as well. And correct me if I'm, telling wrong, but this has been my observation. Now in this case, what do you think, the organizations and the candidates on the other side, the professionals on the other side, should do, to make sure that trust deficit which is being created between the organization and the candidate is being bridged, and the organization keeps on thinking of ways, to improve the productivity of its employees and their overall growth.
Right. So I think there are several sort of strands in the question that you asked. So the first one is, that whole program that organizations used to create. So I think in the back in the day, the organizational what should I say, journey, or the path of the organization going forward was reasonably predictable. And if you have a reasonably predictable path for yourself, you can create career path for employees. You can create programs that will deliver something. So I think you would rotate people around different functions, knowing fully well that after 2 or 3 years, if they have done all of this, they'll be ready to do whatever is required at the end of 3 years. And now you'll agree that today most organizations have no way to predict what is required and when it will be required. So therefore, they are unable to therefore create the right type of those training programs. And some people have tried, and sometimes they have failed, because whatever they have, tried to teach the individuals, and those people said, "I don't need it. I don't think this is required. I have a different point of view." So I think while organizations keep trying and sometimes succeed or sometimes fail, I think individuals have figured out and starting to figure out and should figure out that a lot of learning they can have can be on their own, And similarly, they can figure out what is the combination of things that they want to acquire. Again, this goes back to being unique. Those programs tend to, put people into cohorts and try to create clones of each other by giving someone the same skill, the same exposure, whatever. I would think that today the opportunity for the individual is to leverage some freelance platforms to do projects, some Coursera or other open-ended tools to learn new skills, participate in some other networks to learn something or contribute something. So I think in this, again, today's era, there are so many facets available for individuals to learn and contribute outside the construct of a traditional organization, that many individuals are saying, why do I have to invest time in getting into a 2-year MT program in that company? I would rather learn things that I need on my own and then go and apply it somewhere. So I do think that both sides, the relationship will become more short term oriented, sometimes transactional also. That this whole gig economy, that I can do 3 jobs in parallel, or I can do it at my own will. Organization might also say that, why do I need to have an employee for 10 years? I can have a
Yes.
few people, but many others can be gig economy who can come in and go out and so on and so forth. It's almost like the API economy, that I don't need to buy anything. I can keep a few things, and depending on the need, I can use APIs to pull the service as needed and create a product. So I do think that that is where the world is evolving naturally, and it is reflected in the technology side of it, on the people side of it, on the organizational design side of it. So to me, it's the same thing. To me, it's just a natural evolution, and it is better for every constituent of this ecosystem to recognize that, take advantage of it, rather expect something which happened 10 years ago to happen again and become frustrated.
Yes. So insightful, sir. And this is, this really signifies one of the things which I've always observed in you, is that you have a positive kind of viewpoints for everything which is happening across the world. And that is what we all should actually learn from you. The other question which I have is that when you talk about this gig economy, when you talk about that you have a lot of learning mechanisms available outside as well, where you can experiment, you can keep on learning. What importance does colleges have these days, especially talking from the perspective of so-called 4-year, 3-year, or 2-year degrees, which are there?
Yeah, so I think, I was, I think, telling you the other day that one of the framework that we are applying in our own organization to drive business transformation is a 3-layer framework, where we talk about ways of thinking, ways of working, and ways of doing as 3 levers to drive transformation. And ways of thinking is all about how is your strategy or how is your problem solving more agile, and you continue to think about new things, you are continuously imagining new ideas. So that's at the top. Ways of working is you're continuously thinking of how to organize yourself, how to form partnership, how to do things differently, your funding, your governance, all of those. And ways of doing are the real use of technology and the experimentation. So I think we need to do experimentations in all the 3 layers, which is the thinking layer. How do you keep improving your thought process and your worldview? Is your operating model layer, which is the ways of working, which is how do you scale and sustain what you do, and then the ways of doing, which is how do you leverage technology and tools to make that happen. So the experiments have to happen in all the 3 layers, which you can also connect to the why, how, what on the Simon Sinek Golden Circle framework. If that be the need of the hour and that be the case, my hypothesis is that the ways of doing part, which was very technical in the past, is starting to get automated and simplified, and that will continue to happen. Some people say that the final programming language will be English or net. What they're saying, whichever is your language of communication, is the programming language, because all other languages can get subsumed, and you'll have intelligence system. It will do that. So if you imagine that be the case, then the source of competitive advantage or the way you will contribute will be through the first 2 layers, which is the ways of thinking and the ways of working. Because the ways of doing layers become so simple, so automated, everyone has the same access. Then it's not the thing. And I would actually think that you don't have to go too far. I would think that Amazon is actually a living example of that. Because you think about the technology that Amazon uses at a very micro level is nothing new. It's all out there. There are all these open source tools, all of that. But I think the way they apply the ways of thinking, which is to say, continue to redefine customer obsession. To me, that's what they stand for. That is their why. That is their ways of thinking. Ways of thinking, redefining customer obsession, whether it is AWS, whether it is books, or whether it is whatever, is one thing that they bring to the table. Their ways of working, I think, is signified through those 14 leadership principles, which determine how do you operate, what are the guardrails in which you operate. and the rest is what comes out of it. So I do think that the competitive advantage in future for individuals and corporations will come from honing their ways of thinking and ways of working, which are largely non-technical subjects, if I may say so. So I think the need for colleges or the need for educational institutions to over-invest in non-technology domains is very critical. Because I do think that when we talk about AI and all of that, suddenly people are now talking about ethics of AI, responsibility of AI. Now, most people, haven't studied a course on ethics or responsibility because they went deep dive into the technical side of it. So I do think that the focus of education will start to become more interdisciplinary, more humanities, and more such questions which the machines are yet not capable of answering. So I think humans will start to play a role uniquely where they can, and anything that can be defined properly will be automated, and therefore humans will be beaten by the machines or can do better than the human. Then we don't have to worry doing that. So just like we have allowed the machines to drive us from one destination to other or clean our homes through robots, we will allow machines to do many other cognitive tasks also, so that we can focus on things which are still human, which are still hard to define, which are driven by our own passion, ambition, the softer aspects of it. And therefore schools and colleges and individuals have to play that role to fill that void, which I think exists today, where people have become too overly focused on STEM.
Yes, yes. Right. And now, a related question to this is the hiring thing. Like, with a lot of platforms coming in, a lot of legacy platforms, a lot of new platforms, is still a lot of the hiring is done through HR consultants, which is completely physical. Where do you think, sir, where is the problem, like, if you talk about the hiring, and what more can be done in this space as per you?
Right. I mean, if you were to push the thought process that I was talking to you about in a hypothetical way, if I'm starting a company, right, I can determine what is it that my company stands for, what are the various things which are required to be done in what time frame to make it a success. So I can almost define my purpose, my ambition, and digitally represent it somewhere, and then ask openly to say who can contribute to which part of it, and please come over and do that. So therefore the hiring can be, people can come in and say I can do this for you, and then I can do some bidding and say okay, there are five people willing to do this, who do I select, and based on some factors. So I would think that we can start to think about organizational delivery and the gig economy in some of these ways, where your job is to determine what is it that needs to be done, how it needs to be done, like I said, ways of thinking, ways of doing, and ways of working. And this ways of doing can then be sort of crowdsourced, because if you have designed the architecture, then people come in. I mean, if you have to use the physical example of building a house, I can define my architecture of the house, I can say how it should look like, I can show you design and say okay, each of the parts of this house is up for bidding. So you are a plumber or a mason or a painter, or you are a full stack person who can do everything. Please come and give me a quote on what you can do in what time frame, what price, what quality, and I have my own ways to determine who's the best, and I can crowdsource and get it done. That's the way I'm thinking that things will get done. Because at the end of the day, what is the job of a corporation or anything? To find a way to bring the right resources to get a job done. So you can do it in many different ways.
Yes. So you mean to say that, sir, so organizations, rather than hiring full time, should actually decide on the why and what part, basically, and the process of doing it should be outsourced, and kind of, we should find out the right people who can do that, even if they don't want to get associated with the organization full time, but we should find out those people who can do that in bits and pieces.
Yeah, so I think we need people in the organization to, in my mind, determine the why and the how. The what can potentially be outsourced. It's almost like your own household, where you have determined why your family exists and how it exists. But what needs to be done? Okay, mopping, driving, gardening. Many of these activities are very well defined. They can be outsourced and they are outsourced. So I do think that what is happening is nothing very surreal or very new. It has actually been happening in our lives in different ways, and we have not looked at it in the same way. But I think the fundamental pieces probably are same. It's just that because technology is allowing it to do it at a very large scale and many other things, it appears different, but at a meta level I think it's the same.
Yes, got it. Now I'll take you back a little bit, maybe 22 years back. So you started with, so you worked with ICICI Bank in the initial part of your career as a relationship manager. A lot of, people who come out of the B schools of, a lot of engineering colleges start their career in ICICI as a relationship manager. From there, to Aditya Birla Group, you have basically, worked across various domains, and there's a common misconception which goes on inside the mind of the freshers, because I keep on talking to them, a lot, is that their brother, their sister told them, like, if they pick up a particular domain, they will not be able to switch to any other domain. Your viewpoints on that, sir, because you yourself are an example, like, of working across various domains, throughout your career.
Yeah, I think in the past that type of conception did exist, that people were considered to be expert in one domain and therefore they could not move, and that was there. And I would think that maybe I was a bit of an exception rather than a rule, because when I look at my friends from my ICICI days or G Capital days, many of them are still in banking financial services. When I was in first job consulting, many friends who are in consulting are still in consulting. Then I was in the sort of a GCC, as they call it, the back office world of Dell and Wells Fargo and Standard Chartered. So many of my friends who joined that industry, they are still there, and I'm now in Aditya Birla, which is a conglomerate. And many people in the Aditya Birla group have been here forever, and they've been in the same way. So I do think that there is some merit in that conception. I wouldn't say it's a misconception, that generally people tend to stay in the industry domain and all of that, because I think they probably like it, they get used to it. Maybe at some point in time they are worried that if they go somewhere, will they succeed? They don't want to take risks. Maybe the hiring managers don't want to take risks with people who have different skill set. They would rather hire someone who has done it already, all of that. So I do think that there is, I don't see anything, out of place when people think that way, because I think that's what they have observed. And therefore my career is probably an exception over there. And it's happened because, I wasn't so bothered about any of those things, and some things came my way and I just took a chance and it worked out well. It could have worked out very badly, and I would be sitting here telling you that maybe I made a mistake. So I think many of these things are very hard to quantify based on data, and one data point does not prove the rule. But I do believe that in future, my type of data point can become far more common, because I do think in the data, the digital world, it is far easier for people to do different things and not be confined to the domain as they is defined. And I do think that you look around. I mean, Amazon. We were talking about that just which industry is it in? When it started off, people would say, "Oh, Amazon is a bookseller." Then people would say, "No, no, no. Actually, it has become a digital marketplace. Oh, now they are a cloud company. Tomorrow they will sell cars. Oh, they are a car company." So I do think that the notion of industry is being disrupted by the digital companies, where they are saying, frankly, we are making a lot of these microservices that can come together to offer all kinds of different services to consumers. And we don't care what that service is. Tomorrow I can offer you payments. Tomorrow I can become a bank. I can become a social media company. They are actually doing video streaming services through Prime Video, right? So I do think that the basic, stuff can come together as Lego blocks to create many different services today than ever before. And therefore, the notion of having being part of a function or industry is an old-fashioned waterfall, or organizational hierarchical construct, which doesn't need to be the same in the future. And we are seeing enough examples today for us to believe it. And therefore, as individuals, the faster we shed our identity from being a function or a industry, the better it is. I do think that it is important to keep that identity, but that should not hinder us. Today morning, I was talking to someone who defined himself as a credit risk professional, and I said, "Why do you have to, limit it to it? I think you have great skills, which is that, and underneath that credit skill, you have learned analytics, you have learned many other things. Think about more broadly. Let it be there, but don't restrict yourself to find the next job in credit risk. Keep expanding your horizon and keep doing different things, because that is where I think it will be better, because many of these professions and skill sets will continue to get disrupted. So it's better for us to continue to enhance our skill sets and keep redefining ourselves."
Yes. And one more question, sir, like, this was coming to my mind, so I wanted to ask you this thing, is that, so the sales process or the way of doing sales has actually evolved over time. But do you think, the relationship building, the human to human interactions can ever be replaced inside the entire, sales domain altogether?
I think it also depends on the nature of the product that the consumer is buying and how
Mhm.
emotionally invested they are in that. If I were to buy a stapler, and someone like me is not very emotionally invested in a stapler, just as maybe someone else is. So I may not worry too much. I can go online, look at a stapler, and buy it, right? I play badminton. I buy shuttles regularly online because I know which one I want and what I want. I buy many other things online, but there are some other things. Maybe even my clothes. I would still want to go touch it, maybe try it out, show it to my wife, who's, by the way, the ultimate decision maker in clothes purchase. So some of those things, I want a physical experience. I want a consultant to advise me, give me ideas, all of that. So I think it depends on your engagement. And if you are emotionally engaged, and by definition, emotions are hard to automate, you will need some human intervention to make that happen. But if you are emotionally disengaged, then any digital or any standard path can make it happen, I think.
Got it. And now the last question is that a lot of folks, especially sitting in Bangalore, I meet a lot of folks, who have done a data science course, who have been engineers by background, have done a science course from various institutions, and they want to, start their career in data science. A lot of them do not get jobs. A lot of them are on the way of getting jobs. What will be your advice to them, and how can they pursue a better career in data science?
Right. I I always try to give sports analogies because I imagine that everyone has played some sports or all. So it's almost like saying that when you were young and you went to a cricket field and someone said you start bowling. And you did that because that is what the role was assigned to you, because that seemed to be the. So you can start anywhere. Someone may have been given batting, but usually they give you bowling or actually fielding. So you start there, right? And then you try to see how good you are at it, what you can do about it. But you would want to try out other things. Maybe you could have done something else. I was listening to Mohammed Shami's interview and how he experimented with, not just batting and bowling and many others, right? So I do think of that data science as something that's just a starting point. It happened because maybe someone advised you to do it, or that is what was made available, or all that. So that starting point should not define you. It is what it is. It is a starting point. So use that to see what you can do. Don't get too fixated that now I have to do only this. So just like that previous example, if you're assigned fielding, don't remain a fielder all your life. Try to do other things. In fact, go away from the cricket field. Try hockey, try golf, try running. Maybe you are meant for something else. Maybe you can be an academic or whatever, right? So I think that the again going back to that experimentation and reflection. See, the experimentation allows you to try new things, and the reflection allows you to figure out how good you are at it, or how happy you are with it. That whole ikigai concept. So I do think that if we do some experimentation and reflection, we're able to get a sense. May not be immediately, but over time. So I do think that enough experimentation and reflection can lead you to a certain direction, a certain path. And today, I don't think there is any one well-defined career path for anyone. But let experimentation and reflection drive you and guide you. It will also depend on the opportunity. Maybe you graduated in the year 2001 when there was no job, or 2008 when there was no job, or just last year where it was quite tough for many people. So there will be market conditions where it will appear that you are at fault, but you have to remember that sometimes you are not at fault, and sometimes a year and a half may go by because of poor market conditions. So you don't have to curse yourself. You have to remember that it's all in the market. And sometimes the market is good, life is good. There again, we should not imagine that we are the best thing after sliced bread because we got a job. Maybe the market was so good that they gave a job to anyone who graduated. And maybe we were the worst among all of them. And when the market turned back, we'll be the one who will be chucked out because we just went there where we didn't belong. So on both sides, we have to consider what the market situation is, and neither curse ourselves too much or not praise ourselves too much. Try to be somewhere in the middle and be real.
Superb. Any last advices to all the young entrepreneurs, or all the people, not the young entrepreneurs, all the people who are in the startup space and are trying to build something?
Right. I think the advice is in a different way, that I can say that very long ago on some question, my father had told me this, which stayed with me for a long time, which he said that, whatever we need to do, we can simply learn from nature, because nature has existed for billions of years. We are also a part of nature. So whatever quote or quote is natural, which is what the nature's behavior is, if we were to emulate that, that should be fine, right? And therefore, if you apply that to ourselves, what does nature do? I think at one level, and those are my own interpretation, I think the nature or the physical universe is always expanding. It's, at least the physics tells us that it's always expanding. So it should be in our nature to also expand, not physically but mentally. That how are we improving our horizon, our perspective? So are we curious? We are incorporating new ideas, new hypotheses, new thinking, those things. So if we continue to expand our thinking and thought process by incorporating new variables and also improving our objective function. Our objective function can't be just me myself. When you're a small baby, it's about me myself. You are trying for split milk and all that. But after a while, your objective function is your family. Maybe it can become your country. Maybe it can become the whole world, whatever, right? So I think your objective function has to continue to expand as you grow and get to know more, and the number of variables that are required to optimize that objective function has to expand. So that's what, to me at least, explains my own curiosity, that I still don't know what the bigger objective function of what I have today can be, and what other variables I need to include. So that I can only know by keeping on asking questions, keeping on experimenting and things like that. So that's how I would say that that continuous learning can be derived from the law of nature, that we need to continue to expand our perspectives and horizons, and it's a never-ending quest.
Super. It was great, conversing with you, sir, and such an insightful discussion, as such. And again, thankful for the time, that you always take out, for a lot of people around you, and keep on guiding them, in whatever they are doing. Kudos to you, sir, and I hope that this conversation would be very helpful for the people who will be watching it.
Thanks, Ishi, for the opportunity, because the way I look at all of these conversations with anyone is it provokes me to think differently, it enhances my horizon, and it serves the purpose that I am sort of preaching, that you have to keep increasing your perspective and things like that. So it did, help me to reflect more, and maybe somewhere I have also learned and thought something differently through this conversation. So thanks a lot, and great to meet you, Rishi.
Thanks, Pankaj sir. Looking forward to catch you soon, face to face.
Okay.